Back here with the Way to Go podcast with my buddy Steve Sargent, talking about racism today. And boy, there's a lot to cover. So we're doing actually multiple podcasts this week, more than normal. And it's okay. Let me just go over a couple things. I'm sad about what happened to George Floyd. I'm sad about the riots. I'm sad about any businesses getting destroyed, burned out, people getting shot, killed. It's a disaster. But you know what I'll hear back is there's a lot of hurt, a lot of heartache, and that's why people are so angry. So they're lashing out because we're not listening. They took a knee 4 years ago. We're not listening. We're not listening that there are problems and there are issues. So I think that some of those issues are only going to be corrected as we change our thinking, and we have to line up our thinking with the Bible. The Bible teaches that all men are created in the image of God.
Yes.
That we are all one in Christ. That is clearly the teaching of Scripture. Now, there is a thinking out there sometimes that black people do not have equal opportunity, and they're not. I guess I would like you to just share about your family, and either say that's true or debunk it or whatever you want to do. Go ahead.
That's kind of almost like a generic term to say black people don't have equal access. There are some who do, and there are probably a lot who do, and there are some who don't have equal access to a number of things, or maybe even the knowledge of how to obtain it.
Right.
So that is an issue. It's an issue on both sides, but it is an issue. My family was different, not without struggle, but I was blessed to have a mom and dad at home, which wasn't always easy. I mentioned before, my father suffered. He was a World War II veteran, and I'm sure, though he was never diagnosed, that he had PTSD.
What was his role in World War II?
Well, my dad's role in the war, he was in the South Pacific.
Okay.
But his primary job was he actually drove around a lot of the higher commanders. He was their driver. You see
that's one of the most dangerous jobs out there.
And then, his ship was torpedoed on the way to the Philippines.
Okay.
So my dad, he had managed to survive, but he lost his best friend who he grew up with.
Okay.
My dad got off the ship, and his best friend was trapped behind the door. He couldn't get out. My father had nightmares for 65 years.
Wow.
Up until including the night before he died.
Right.
And I don't mean just waking up, running, hiding, the whole nine.
Right.
He never had any treatment. And I'm not saying that there was none available.
Right.
It wasn't something you did.
Right.
Especially when he was discharged in 1945. You didn't.
Right.
Like, I think I need to go talk to somebody. No, you didn't. You know what you did? You went and got a drink, and you talked to the drink.
Right.
My father drank excessively.
Okay.
He was a functional alcoholic until I was probably about 3 or 4 when he stopped. I never knew because he drank, because he wouldn't, when I came along, because I'm the youngest, he wouldn't be drunk around us.
Right.
But prior to me, he had some episodes. He almost killed my mom before. I mean, I could just go on with horrific stuff. But I will tell you this, let me put this in as a disclaimer. What saved my family was my mother's relationship with Jesus Christ. She came to know him at an early on in their marriage, a few years after they got married. And she made him the center of her life, and that's how she raised us. And even when he was non-compliant, her relationship with him eventually brought my father to that way. So that saved us. And I preached a sermon once in Southern Ohio. The church saved my life. And what I'm saying, in essence, Jesus saved my life. Everything my parents didn't know, my father never, he only had a 3rd grade education. My mom was one of the smartest people I ever met, even to this day. She made it all the way to the 11th grade. And she had to drop out because her grandparents raised her. Then her grandfather died, so then she had to help out, so she had to drop out to go to work and what have you. So, but all my homework at school, she helped me. I still can't do some of the math that my mother did, from an 11th grade education.
Right.
She was a great woman, but she loved Jesus Christ. And the love of Jesus Christ, my personality, as far as me being a people person, my mother. The comedian side was my mom, my dad too. My dad was a practical joker and he was a pleasant man when he wasn't dealing with the stuff that he was fighting.
He nobly served. I mean, in World War II.
Yes.
I mean, this man nobly served.
Absolutely.
He nearly lost his life for his country. Yet he comes back from World War II. He was in Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Right, and came to Ashtabula County to escape oppression, racism.
He moved, initially he moved to Missouri. My mom was from southern Missouri.
Okay.
My dad came from a huge family. There were 15 in his family.
Wow.
Brothers and sisters. And one of my dad's uncles and a couple of his aunts moved from their area to southern Mississippi, Missouri.
Right.
And my dad moved there, got a job on the railroad because he did not want to go back to Mississippi
Right.
for obvious reasons. And he went to southern Missouri. It wasn't much better, but it was better.
Right.
That's how he met my mom. My mom went to school with some of my father's cousins and so on. So they ended up hooking up. They got married. And my uncle, my dad's uncle, my great uncle, moved to Ashtabula, got a job at one of the factories that are now closed by Lakeshore Park.
Okay.
And so there's about a dozen families that moved from that town to Ashtabula because, they heard about it and went to work and so on.
So there were job opportunities for black people.
They came here, and that's why they came. Listen, probably, I would say more than half of the black people in Ashtabula City, their families' roots come from Mississippi. Either, their mom or dad or grandmother or grandfather from Mississippi. It's the largest single state in the South where we have had the migration of blacks come from to Ashtabula. He found an opportunity. They were able to buy a house. They raised us. My dad lost his job. He worked for the tannery. I don't know if you're familiar with the tannery.
Yeah.
And,
not there anymore, but
right. And they closed like when back in the late 70s, early 80s, because their biggest contract was with Chrysler. And Chrysler went through that whole mess before Lee Iacocca took over and they bought out AMC and Dodge and all of them combined. So my father's factory lost their contract. He lost his job. He'd been there 25 years. So we were living off my mom's income. I thought we were poor. We weren't poor enough to be like on assistance.
Right.
But, all of a sudden you got a household making whatever, and then it's almost like in half. And one of my older brothers was going to college. He just went. And it was just before my sister had gone to college too. And then you got your household income as well. But my dad didn't stop. He was closer to retirement age because, like I said, he was old enough to be my grandfather. He started working doing janitorial services with a friend of his that owned a company.
Okay.
And he did that until he was 86 when he finally retired.
Wow.
So we still we couldn't get the newer car that we would get.
And I just want to say that, I just want to point out, he came up here after World War II to work a job, not to be on government assistance.
Right.
He came here to work a job. He worked until he was 86 years old. Mm-hmm. He raised 6 children, you and your mom. Your mom worked her whole life at the hospital as a cook, right?
Yep.
She's a great cook, as you said, right? Head cook. And then there are 6 of you. What are your brothers and sisters? How many brothers, how many sisters?
Well, my father has 2 other kids besides the 6 of us.
Okay.
But of the 6 of us, my oldest brother is in Missouri, outside of Kansas City. He works for a company that he actually started working for here. He's been out there probably 17, 18 years. His daughter went to college out there. My sister and her husband got a job at a college that my niece was going to.
Okay.
My brother relocated there. Met
what does
his wife.
What does he do?
He works for an oxygen company. So he takes oxygen to hospitals, homes, and he's about ready to retire. But that's what he's done probably a third of his working career.
Okay.
And my second brother just left his job. He and his wife move in Tucson, Arizona. Okay. And they're living off of the good of the land because she inherited whatever from their family and stuff.
Right.
So they just moved there about a year ago, and they don't have to work financially.
Right.
And they're just kind of like trying to figure out which part of town they want to live in. So for the time being, they're just like enjoying whatever, and they'll go back to work at some point, maybe until they retire.
Right.
And then I have a brother that retired from First Energy, took an early retirement, and he was a product of a vocational education in Jefferson now called ATEC.
Right.
And one of my sisters is a principal administrator, school system in Wisconsin.
Right.
And she went to our schools here, went to Kent State main campus. She got her first job at Grand River Academy.
Right. So she got educated, and she didn't have a problem with if your family ever had a problem getting loans, going to college, and
no,
to go to college?
We haven't had problems getting loans unless we weren't qualified. And I don't know of any situation where we really needed a loan or try to get a house or something and we couldn't.
Right.
Basically because of the color of your skin.
So you don't feel like you were held back?
No, I don't think so at all. No, I don't. I have not felt that. And I'm not saying nobody else.
All right. What's the other one do?
But she's my other sister is actually a associate pastor at a ministry in Warren.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what she does. And
awesome.
She's going to be relocating back to this area, but that's what she does.
Well, I will be pleased to meet her someday.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty
so
awesome.
we're kind of a different group, but like I said, our family wasn't perfect. I don't think anybody's is. We had to deal with my dad. And I always liked being at home. I wasn't like tormented at home. I didn't mind being at home.
Right.
I loved being at home. We had people who cared. In the church, was everything else. Like, I didn't see a lot of, let me tell you, the first minority business owner I ever knew was at my church. The first minority educator I ever knew was at my church. I just thought the world was there at my church. Right. And not only that, because we were so affiliated with other churches in Cleveland and different parts of the country. That was half of my travel I ever did was for church.
Right.
So we do a big summer conference. We would be in one next month if we weren't going through the COVID in Columbus this year with our international church. And I'm a part of that group that helped organize that and work it. We had already made our plans, did walkthrough with the convention center and everything just fell through because we had to cancel it.
Right.
But I met in our youth part of it, one of the guys who helped Mark Zuckerberg start Facebook. He was a black guy,
right,
that helped work with him to bring Facebook, which everybody just about has all over the world. Those are the things I grew up seeing. So I'm sure there's racism. I know there is.
Right.
But I always saw the other side, the people who learn to overcome in spite of.
Right.
You don't use it as a crutch because somebody doesn't like you or a door shuts in your face here. There are other doors and there are other opportunities, and there are ways for you to take a stand and to make sure that the next generation doesn't have to suffer maybe like you did.
Right.
That's the way I was raised.
Right.
That's what I saw. My first pastor at birth was only 2 months older than my father. He was a World War II vet. He was our pastor. He came from Cleveland to pastor our church here. He was my hero. He was promoted from being our pastor to being the district over in our jurisdictions in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
He left when I was a kid, but then he assigned me as a teenager to be the youth pastor, assistant youth pastor for all of our churches in Ohio in our jurisdiction. So I've always had a good relationship with him. He was a great businessman. He was the first black real estate broker in Ashtabula County. He did those things.
Right.
That's what I saw.
And he wasn't held back.
No,
right.
and he had, I'm sure, some doors shut in his face.
Right.
I'm sure he had some racial things to deal with. In fact, when our church started in Ashtabula in the late 1950s, a stranger, I don't know who that was, came by, this is what I was told, I wasn't born, and told our pastor that a church like this will never last. I'll give you guys 6 months.
Right.
We're 60 whatever years old now.
Yeah,
and not only that, several churches have grown out of our church.
Right.
So those things don't stop you just because somebody doesn't like you or maybe you feel or have been discriminated against. You can't let it stop you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some government rules. Like some of the things I heard you talk about, not only in this podcast, but the one we did prior, I'm listening to and I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, that's just a typical problem a lot of people face, whether there's some type of financial hardship or you lose a job, your company closed down. I remember I could not get a fixed loan on my house because of government rules, and my bank actually told me what bank I could go to get a fixed loan because I thought it was the craziest thing. I had too much land.
Really?
I had too much land. And so I actually had more collateral, and they wanted me to go and survey it off, and because of government regulations, and it had nothing to do with being black or white,
right.
But I could not get a fixed rate loan from my own bank, so I had to go to another bank, and they told me which bank to go to, and I got the loan. Like you said, it was a door shut in my face. It certainly wasn't racial. It was just government bureaucracy. You know what I mean? This is kind of ridiculous. But racial inequality is a disparity in opportunity, a treatment that occurs as a result of somebody's race. Now, I talked to a wonderful woman last night who attends our church, and she felt that in her career working over 30 plus years, there were times where she was passed over because she was black. There were times where she was training white people to be her supervisor when she was higher educated, she had a college degree, she had a master's degree, and she was never allowed to enter that. She's been yelled at. She's been told, you get in your place. And then she responded, and what place would that be? Are you saying we're not equal, right? Because you get in your place. You be quiet. You don't talk to me.
Wow.
Because why? Because that person was white and she was black. So she said that she has seen some of that. Her own son was denied as a soldier. Was denied in Texas to the ability to buy gas at a gas station when him and his buddy needed to buy gas, and they're in military uniform. As a black man was denied, and they had to pray their way to the next exit that they would have enough gas to get there. And they did, and they got gas to the next place. It wasn't a problem. So one place was a problem. It's not all places, but obviously the one place was. And there was a few other stories she had like that where, there's definitely there are times where you're looked down on. And she said that's why there's some anger out there. There's anger because they feel like there's oppression. There's anger because they feel like, well, how come they're all getting promoted, or all these people are coming in, they haven't been in the country as long as we have, and they're all getting looked at differently than we are. We're looked at differently because of the color of our skin. That's where I would like to see that end. I would like to see opportunity being denied just because a person is black, or being given to a person just because they're black. Either way it goes, I just think that, no, I think opportunity should exist for everyone. We should have an equal playing field. I've always felt that way for all people. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely. We want to level the playing field, because ultimately we're going to all prosper when it's leveled.
Right. Well, yeah, and the more prosperity there is, the less problems we're going to have, right? To be honestly, I felt this way for a long time. If I was president of the United States, on week one of my job, I'd be in the inner cities, because I would want to be helping the black community and think, hey, what can we do to help? What can we do to end some of the strife that we're seeing, and really try to make that a top goal of working on, because we have seen riots. If nothing else, Steve. If nothing else, just so it'll end. I mean, we've had kneeling in the NFL. We've had, obviously there are a lot of people that believe there's inequality. If there wasn't a lot of people believing there's inequality, you wouldn't have people taking that knee.
That's right.
So now either there's either inequality, or there's a huge misinformation problem, or there's something's going on here, and it needs to be fixed either way. Because there's certainly a lot of thinking in that way, and there's a lot of anger and stress and strife and anguish and heartache because of these things. And that's where everyone's got to get on the same page. We are all one in Christ. We are all created in God's image. There's no difference. A white man, black man, Oriental man, Hispanic man, woman, it doesn't matter.
That's right. That's the way Christ made us.
Right. Stereotyping, I think, too, is unfortunate. One of the things I see, Steve, too, is just is a tendency to paint with one broad stroke. In other words, like I said in the last podcast, all whites are middle class or rich. All blacks aren't. All whites have this, all blacks don't. Life is not that simple, because I can take you to the white community right here in Ashtabula County and show you a lot of disadvantaged people. I've worked with a lot of disadvantaged kids, white children right here in Ashtabula County that don't have parents around them. Their parents are in jail. Their parents have been strung out on drugs. Their parents are drunk. No one's paying attention. These kids are running all over the place. They're not clean. They don't have, they live in situations that are mind-boggling, truly. I've talked to bus drivers and little kids, white kids, coming on the bus, cockroaches running out of their book bags. I can take you to terrible situations and inequity everywhere. So it's not fair to say all white people are middle class and all white people have the same opportunity. That is not true.
Right.
That is certainly not true. Just like it would be unfair to say all black people, experience this kind of racism. All black. No, but there are pockets of it.
Yes.
And as long as there's not justice for everybody, there shouldn't be justice, right? We should all be concerned about that. And as long as it exists, I think in our thinking, we just got to get our thinking squared away. We are one. Yeah. We are the same. And one thing I want to talk about in the next podcast too is this. We shouldn't look at each other as white and black. We got to stop talking about it and in these terms. What happened to George Floyd happens to all of us. Yeah. We're Americans, man. Right. That happened on American soil. There was injustice, man. And it's liberty and justice for all. That is the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States.
That's right.
Now, we're not going to be serious about that. Then we had to shut our mouths when that pledge is uttered. We shouldn't be saying it if we don't mean it.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. And that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, that we are all the same in the eyes of God, even in the Constitution.
Right.
We are all men are created equal. And that's one of the things they said in the beginning, and we just want to live by it.
Right. So all whites, the thinking that all whites are racist, whether active or passive, nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. I mean, you don't know every white person. You don't know the neighborhoods they've grown in. A lot have grown up in very diverse neighborhoods, and they're used to it. They're fine with it. They don't think a thing about it. All blacks are thugs. That would be the wrong thing to say. All cops are violent and are out to get blacks. Wrong.
That's right. That's correct.
It's just wrong.
Right.
So I look at that kind of stuff and say, we've got to stop painting with these broad brushes and thinking that every cop is this way, every black is this way, every white is this way. That's nonsense. That's not true on every side. It'd be like saying every Republican's this, every Democrat is this, every Christian is this, no. No, there's just no way that could be true.
Right.
But we do know what the Bible teaches. All men are created equal in God's eyes. All men are created in the image of God. All are one in Christ. We do know that. You've been listening to the Way to Go to podcast. Hope that you have a great and fantastic week.